Alright, okay, so let's begin today's lesson. Today's lesson will be on character interactions. But before we go into that, alright, I'm just gonna show you something real quick, alright? So it's called the talking head syndrome, alright? So let's take a look at a story excerpt. So how did it go? Gabriel asked. How did what go? Deborah asked back. You know, the meeting with your boss. Then I don't want to talk about it. Right. So how does this interaction feel? What are your thoughts about this interaction? Very bland. Okay. Doesn't feel like it takes place in a setting. Yeah. So that's basically what they mean by talking head syndrome. It feels like the characters are talking heads, right? They are talking heads in a box. You don't know where they are, you don't know what they're doing, they are just they're just saying stuff, right? Sounds like a roleplay chat. No. Okay, let's try another version of it, right? There was a sound of jingling keys, the clack of the lock, and the front door swinging open. Deborah stepped in and slammed the door behind her. Gabriel looked up from the newspaper he was reading on the couch. How did it go? He asked. How did what go? Deborah slammed her handbag on the kitchen counter before opening the refrigerator. You know, the meeting with your boss? Deborah paused. I don't want to talk about it. So much better. Provides more context on the feeling and mood. Yeah. Yeah. It feels like the characters are interacting with the world. Yeah. So this is um a problem that happens sometimes. Like people can begin scenes and you don't know what the setting is about. Right. Which is why in the previous lesson we talked about setting, because setting can help to ground your characters in the scene. Right. So when we look at character interactions, right, you can look at characters interacting with other characters, and you can look at characters interacting with the setting. And so in this scenario, I made Deborah interact with the door, right? I made Deborah interact with the refrigerator, and Deborah also interacted with Gabriel, right? And so there's more interaction that's happening. Yeah. Obviously, you can do more than just that. You can have like introspection and the whole lot of other stuff. But we won't worry about that today. All right. So we're just gonna talk about character scene interactions and character interactions. Okay. So character scene interactions, right? Try to tap on basically a character's senses, thoughts, emotions, and actions. So you can think of this as like a checklist. All right, it doesn't mean you have to apply all of them, right? But you know, like for instance, in the story, we didn't really go into the thoughts or whatever, but you can feel a bit of the emotion, right? You can see what she's doing. You can feel a bit about her thought process or emotions, and you hear the jingling of the keys. You can feel the bag getting slammed on the table, right? And so when you add these kind of aspects to the story or to the scene, it can feel a bit more visceral, and it can help bring the character or bring the reader into the scene with the characters. Um, another way to another thing you can look out for is, instead of just describing the scene from the narrator's point of view, if you do it through the character's point of view, it can feel more like, again, more visceral. You're bringing the action closer to the reader. So rather than saying the weather was hot, you can say Gabriel grumbled. He never liked the hot weather. Then again, he never liked cold weather either. Right? So you bring it through the lenses of the character, and then the reader can feel it better. Right? Other stuff, take advantage of props in the scene. So like, you know, they interact with the scene, right? Just earlier, Deborah slammed the door, she slammed the bag on the counter, right? Use that, and you can take advantage of that to express thoughts, emotions, right? If you want to show the character is nervous, something to fidget. If they're angry, break something, right? If you want to show that character is friendly, you know, they can have a welcoming house while they invite a guest in, right? And what's good about this is that it adds a specific flavor to it, right? Because if you just tell me he furrowed his brows because he was angry, and he raised his voice because he's angry, right? Or even worse, you just tell me he's angry. It doesn't go very far. Because different people are angry in different ways, right? You can have someone who storms about the room, raises his voice, and shouts, right? You can also have someone who just down there with a frown, and then he just does heavy breaths. He's gonna speak to you in very sharp tones, right? And when you hear him talk, it's not gonna be raised, but you can hear the anger inside. Yeah, so different kinds of anger, right? It will show, and now the reader understands how this person like displays different emotions, right? And now you're learning and understanding more about the person's character, right? Yeah. You can also use scenes to complement or contrast the character's personality and emotional state. So if a character is feeling sad, they can be in a gloomy room and the weather is storm, right? You know, the usual like, oh man, like woe is me and it's raining and thunderstorm, right? But you can also contrast that, right? Sometimes like if you put a very sad, depressed person in the middle of a park, right? And then like kids are playing, everyone's having fun, someone's blowing bubbles, right? Like man, don't you feel bad for the man that is crying in the corner on the park bench, right? Uh yeah, you say okay wait, let me move. Okay, before we move on to example, let me see. Always imagine men stomping around being vocal or angry, while a woman will quietly plot out revenge and use their anger. Well, you can. The reason people use stereotypes is that it's very easy to imagine, and so it's easier to come up with them, right? But you can play around. I think you don't have to restrict yourself, right? Like you know, some people can be very silent, angry, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a man or a woman, right? Like sometimes breaking free of the stereotypes can help make your characters feel less flat, less cookie cutter, you know? Especially you can't just have like, oh, there's two male characters and they're angry and stomping around, right? You can have one's angry and stomping around, the other just in the corner, like a lot on his mind. Someone comes up to him, don't talk to me, right? You see, that can add the edge to it. Yeah. So example, this was from a story I wrote a few years ago. So Kazuki laid on the floor of the empty prison cells. Four bare walls surrounded him on all sides, save for a metal door in the center of one of them. Built into the door was a narrow barred window that barely let him look into the corridor outside. He shrugged it off as a bad design until he realized that the window wasn't for his benefit. It was for the guards to monitor him. A bulb was built into the ceiling, confined behind a frosted and translucent plate that was aligned with the ceiling, forming a smooth surface as it diffused the bulb's pale blue light throughout the cell, contrasting the orange prison suit the wolf was wearing. So I'm not gonna say that I'm not gonna like claim that this is good, but I use this as an example because if you think about an actual prison, it doesn't look like that, right? Actual prisons are not blue, right? But I made it blue because like I wanted it to feel cold. I want you to feel like it's not a very welcome place to be, right? And that's the goal here. Yeah, then a lot of things, in fact, if you look at like empty prison cell, bare walls, metal door, narrow barred window, right? All these things are traits that feel very unwelcoming. And when you so my hope is that when a reader reads this scene, you know, they don't feel good, right? So that's kind of like having the scene reflect the character's emotional state, right? Here's another one. The laughter of kids at the carnival, a joyful compliment to the waves crashing against the rocky shore. I think I left out the word were. Families strode down the asphalt pavement, moving leisurely between the rides, attractions, and booths. John watches them, but his mind registers none of it. He feels only a cool numbness, a deep emptiness. For you see, just 2 days ago, John lost his wife. Okay. So if you paint a very colorful scene and you put somewhere else contrasting, like in there, there's a stark contrast, right? And so it makes his emotional state feel more jarring, right? Again, it depends on what your intention is with the scene and what you want the reader to feel, right? So you just play around with this. I think that there's a lot of possibilities. This is super fun to experiment with. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? I realized I didn't put any question checkpoints here. But I will remember where we do the checkpoint, the questions. Questions. So the materials around the scenes will affect how the reader should feel. Yes and no. I mean, it's up to you, right? If like sometimes people write scenes without the intention of making anything happen, right? But you can write scenes in a way to make the reader feel something. It's just whether or not are you intentional about it, right? I think there's the joke, the literature, like, oh, haha, the curtains were blue because it reflected John's depression, but like meanwhile the author, haha, curtain blue is nice, right? But that's not necessarily like the reason why you analyze it is because it can help with your writing too, right? When you bring the blue curtains in, right, like the sunlight filters through the blue curtains, bathing everything in the soft, the soft, like dull pastel colors, right? And then like you can see the dust filtering through the air, like he's in the house, like everything is like the table hasn't been cleaned in 3 days, right? There's like 3 coffee cups in there with dried coffee at the bottom. You feel something, right? You can use the scene to help. Like maybe it's to give the reader an emotional state, right? Maybe it's to help the reader understand the character state, right? And you can play around. I mean, it's an experiment, right? This is an art form, and I'm not gonna tell you do X, Y, Z, right? You can play around and see which one gives you the effect that you are aiming for in your scene, in your story. Yeah. Hope that makes sense. Like I don't like to teach it as a you should do this. I will say you can do this and it may potentially make some readers feel that. Right? Not all the readers will feel that, right? But some will. Okay. We can take one last question before we move on, if there is any. Alright, let's move on then. Okay. So we have character interaction. So you can also use other characters to complement or contrast the character's personality and emotional state. So just as we use the location to help reflect, you can use characters, right? There's dialogue, there's interactions between them. For instance, let's say they're close friends, right? You can have like the chemistry, right? They finish each other's sentences or like they bounce ideas back and forth. You know the scenes where like they're doing a heist and you can feel their chemistry because one person is like, we can do this, and then we get stuck here, and then someone else will be like, oh, but we can use the other thing to do this other thing, and then we can get into the other way. Like, that's great, and then I can use this, and then they just jump in on each other. That's how you show chemistry, right? or I mean, that's one of the ways to show chemistry. Then meanwhile, if you want to show the opposite, one person sees something and the person's like, yeah, sure, right? And you can feel their personalities clash, right? So tension in dialogue. Tension is good because it helps drive a bit more. You know, the same like so dialogue in stories can sometimes feel a bit boring if not done purposefully, right? And that's why you get characters talking to each other and they go like, oh hi, what you doing? And like, oh, I was just finishing up lunch, right? I am like, you know, and I'm going to go home to relax. Oh yeah, that sounds fun. Like, okay, have fun, bye, bye. Right? Nothing happened. Right. Whereas if you add some tension, right? So example, yeah, what are you doing? Like, oh, I just had lunch. It's lunch with him again, right? Yeah, so like, okay, yeah, no, nothing's wrong. Look, we broke up 3 weeks ago. All right, this shouldn't matter to you. Yeah, like you know, oh, you feel it, right? So one thing to keep in mind is that when you write stories, you don't have to go for realistic dialogue because realistic can be very boring. You go for believable dialogue, right? And the dialogue should have a purpose, right? And usually the purpose can be tension. Even for like friendly characters, you can add some subtext just to make it feel a bit more exciting, right? So tension is good. So some examples of tension, circumstantial tension, right? There's like external forces. You can also have relationship tensions and romantic sexual tension. So example like in like Avengers, right? There's external forces, right? Like, you know, you there's tension in the dialogue because oh no, we are worried that like whatever like Loki unleashed on this world is gonna destroy the world. Oh no, right? Then there's also like relationship tension, right? Where two characters, you know, they have they basically have tension, right? Where you know they're scared of a breakup, they're scared of breaking up the team, right? Or like you know two members in a team, like in a group project, they fight. You know the that's the kind of like tension that you can put between people. Then like romantic tension, right? You're just like, oh yeah, maybe one person's trying to flirt, the other person is just like awkward about it, and you're just like, sure. Oh man, right. Yeah, here's another one, right? Remember in like I'm just gonna bring up the same stories over again, aren't I? Because like bringing up like the this Infinity Wars again, right? The whole like oh for Spider-Man, right? Like we didn't even care about like oh okay half the world is gone, we don't care, right? But the moment like you have that relationship between two people, like we don't care that like half of like the world disappeared, okay, but we cared about that one person, and then we see like oh it's the third, like I'm scared, like I don't want to go, right? So these kind of things add tension as well, rather than like, oh, the whole world dies. That's why they always do this whole trope of like, well, the whole world's gonna die, cool, or like the whole city's gonna be poisoned, sure. Oh, but Batman, I got your girlfriend in the cage. Right? And then suddenly the tensions ramp up. Because, you know, sometimes we realize like, hey, the man's gonna save the day anyway. It's not like they can get rid of Gotham City, it's not like they can destroy the whole earth or the whole universe, right? But we can destroy and we can murder the person that like the main character feels the closest to. Oh, and that's where you start to get some very intense stuff. Okay, but this not all tension has to be like the external kind, right? Like there's also like the interaction between people. So I'm gonna go to the Hunger Games. Hunger Games has like oh man, I love Susan Collins books. Okay. Context, alright? Katniss prepares for an interview that will decide that if people want to sponsor her when she goes into the arena to fight to her death. Right? So that's the context. She's preparing for interview. After lunch, Hamish takes me to the sitting room. The me meaning Katniss. directs me to the couch, and then just frowns at me for a while. But I finally ask, I'm trying to figure out what to do with you, he says. How we're gonna present you. Are you gonna be charming, aloof, fierce? So far, you're shining like a star. You volunteered to save your sister. Sina made you look unforgettable. You got the top training score. People are intrigued, but no one knows who you are. The impression you make tomorrow will decide exactly what I can get you in terms of sponsors, says Haymitch. Having watched the tribute interviews all my life, I know there's truth to what he's saying. If you appeal to the crowd, either by being humorous or brutal or eccentric, you gain favor. What's Peter's approach? Or am I not allowed to ask? I say. Likeable. He has a sort of self-deprecating humor naturally, says Haymitch. Whereas when you open your mouth, you come across more as sullen and hostile. I do not. Please. I don't know where you pulled out that cheery, wavy girl on the chariot from, but I haven't seen her before or since. And you've given me so many reasons to be cheery, I counter. But you don't have to please me. I'm not going to sponsor you. So pretend I'm the audience, says Haymitch. Delight me. Fine, I snort. Haymitch takes the role of the interviewer and I try to answer his questions in a winning fashion. But I can't. I'm too angry with Haymitch for what he said and that I even have to answer the questions. All I can think is how unjust this whole thing is, the Hunger Games. Why am I hopping around like some trained dog trying to please people I hate? The longer the interview goes on, the more my fury seems to rise to the surface until I'm literally spitting out answers at him. Alright, enough, he says. We gotta find another angle. Not only are you hostile, I don't know anything about you. I ask you 50 questions and still have no sense of your life, your family, what you care about. They want to know about you, Katniss. But I don't want them to. I'm already taking my future. They can't have the things that mattered to me in the past, I say. Then lie. Make something up, says Haymitch. I'm not good at lying, I say. Well, you better learn fast. You got about as much charm as a dead slut, says Haymitch. Yeah. So what kind of tension is there, right? See? It's like a sarcastic, snarky kind of vibe, right? It's very emotionally charged. And it's combative, right? Even though Haymitch is someone who's trying to help her, right? The way they speak feels like they're fighting each other. He's trying to help. He's saying stuff to her and then she counters it with, I can't do it. That's not me. Why do I please these people? And then like, bro, they're on the same side, right? So, you see, just because people are on the same team or on the same side or because they are friends doesn't mean that the dialogue can't have tension, right? They can fight, they can grapple. In that, right, you can feel a power struggle that's happening. I feel like he's being combative because he'll know it work on her. Not within this scene. It's not. He was genuinely trying to help and he's just like, I fucking give up. Sorry for swearing. Okay, any questions so far before we move on? There's desperation behind it. Life and death is on the line. And this and many other scenes reminded you of when you read it. Yeah, oh man, the book is good. The fourth movie is coming out soon in like November. I'm looking forward. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a few more seconds. Usually leave out conversation markers to make conversations flow better. Conversation markers, so for those contexts, like conversation markers is like I say, he says. So the good thing about say and said or asked is that it tends to be invisible, which is good. You don't want things like, can you imagine like, I don't want them to, I scream, then lie, make something out, Haymitch counters. I'm not good at lying, I admit. Right? Then it feels very jarring because now you are you're just reading all these words, but I can infer that, right? And so sometimes people will switch up to the word say. Alternatively, you can also like, I don't want them to, right? And then you just don't even say I say, right? You can just leave it out. If you think it's still clear when you read, then it's fine. Like, I think you have a lot of options, but she's already on the safer side by using the word says, right? She's not, Suzanne Collins is not writing like scream, shout. You can tell she's shouting. All right, so let's move on. Okay, the next scene. All right, yeah, the next scene over here, Sina, who's Katniss' stylist, surprises her with the dress that he designed. So she has to go onto stage soon, but they have one conversation. All right, I'm not pretty. I am not beautiful. I am radiant as the sun. For a while, we all just stare at me. Oh, Sina, I finally whisper. Thank you. Pull for me, he says. I hold up my arms and spin in a circle. The prep team screams in admiration. Tina dismisses the team and has me move around in the dress and shoes, which are infinitely more manageable than Effie's. The dress hangs in such a way that I don't have to lift the skirt when I walk, leaving me with one less thing to worry about. So all ready for the interview then, asks Sina. I can see by his expression that he's been talking to Haymitch, that he knows how dreadful I am. I'm awful. Haymitch called me a dead slug. No matter what we tried, I just couldn't do it. I just can't be one of those people he wants me to be, I say. Tina thinks about this a moment. Why don't you just be yourself? Myself? That's no good either. Haymitch says I'm sullen and hostile, I say. Well, you are around Haymitch. Tina says with a grin. I don't find you so. The prep team adores you. You even won over the game makers. And as for the citizens of the capital, well, they can't stop talking about you. No one can help but admire your spirit. My spirit? That's a new thought. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but it suggests I'm a fighter in a sort of brave way. It's not as if I'm never friendly. Okay, maybe I don't go around loving everybody I meet. Maybe my smiles are hard to come by. But I do care for some people. Tina takes my icy hands in his warm ones. Suppose, when you answer the questions, do you think you're addressing a friend back home? Who would your best friend be? Asks Sina. Gale, I say instantly. Only it doesn't make sense, I would never be telling Gale these things about me. He already knows them. What about me? Could you think of me as a friend? Asks Sina. Of all the people I've met since I left home, Sina is by far my favorite. I like him right off and he hasn't disappointed me yet. I think so, but I'll be sitting on the main platform with the other stylists. You'll be able to look right at me. When you're asked the question, find me and answer it as honestly as possible, says Sina. Even if what I think is horrible, I ask. Because it might be, really. Especially if what you think is horrible, says Sina. You'll try it? I nod. It's a plan, or at least straws to grasp at. Too soon it's time to go. The interviews take place on a stage constructed in front of the training center. Once I leave my room, it'll only be minutes until I'm in front of the crowd. The cameras all pan out. As Sina turns the doorknob, I stop his hand. Sina, I'm completely overcome with stage fright. Remember, they already love you, he says gently. Just be yourself. So now, tension. What do you guys feel? Yeah, Lawe, I'll answer your question later. Slightly more relaxed, he knows how to diffuse the internal tension. There's letting off steam for a bit, happy thoughts. There's emotional support, there's uncertainty. There's the reduction of personal tension. Okay, but okay, I would say what helps is that you can still feel a bit of tension. It's not like he says relax, then she's like, sure, yeah, I will relax. There was like a so there was a friendly, almost intimate gentleness in that conversation. And then there's the push and pull, right? Like she'll be like why don't you try this, right? Why don't you try talking like you're talking to a friend at home? And then she pushes back. She's just like, but Gail knows everything. Then what about me? You, but like, you know, like, but I don't know, right? And so she feels discouraged, and then Sina encourages her. She pushes back, and then he comes back and pushes gently. So there's like a push and pull, which feels that is a different kind of tension. It's not like the everything's gonna go wrong, but you can feel that tension, right? So in fact, like, she doesn't like to express vulnerability. So even her just saying Sina, right? She didn't say I'm scared. She just says Sina, right? And that's enough to convey the like her weakness and the fact that she's still vulnerable in that moment. You know, it shows that she, like, you know, Sina has broken through in that sense. Meanwhile, like, this is a few minutes of conversation. Meanwhile, the other with Haymitch, it was like an hour of like spitting out spitting out answers at him, right? Like that's their chemistry, right? They are very negative push and pull, right? But here it feels like almost intimate, right? There's still tension, right? It's closer to like the romantic tension, even though that is not romance, but there is that intimate tension, right? There is also another subtle tension of the it'll only be minutes, right? Because she's already having to go up on stage. They don't have forever to talk about it. They only have a few minutes. And that's also a second kind of tension, right? The ticking clock. We'll also go into this in a later lesson. Yeah. Make sense so far? Okay, any questions? In the meantime, like, to answer, when you use the dialogue, don't use the dialogue text to show that they're angry. It usually, I won't say don't. I would just say avoid, because it can be very lazy, right? Rather than, oh, stop it, she says angrily. Just, why don't you change it, right? Stop it, just stop it. All right. You don't have to tell me she screamed it, because I can feel the anger, right? Like, meanwhile, rather than stop it, she cried, right? She can like, stop it, just stop. All right, I had enough, right? You can use the words, right? Or stop it, she slammed the door. Just stop it. And then you hear her storming away from behind the door, right? You don't have to tell me she screams. You can use the scene, you can use their actions to convey. You can use dialogue text if you want, right? But use sparingly, and don't rely on it. All right, it's a tool to use, but you know, you don't use like the same way, you know, you have a hammer, you can use them on nails, right? But don't go like nailing screws and nailing, like, I don't know, nailing everything. Yeah. Okay. All right. So dynamics, right? Explore the dynamic between characters, right? Maybe one person can be more outgoing than the other, right? Or like maybe there's a boss and employee thing, then they can dislike each other, their conversations can be forced, aggressive, like these kind of things, right? You have, like, for instance, in the earlier scene, you have Haymitch, who is more trying to help her, and Katniss, who doesn't want to be helped in that way, right? And so she's very aggressive, and then he's aggressive as well, right? And very straightforward. Right. Meanwhile, you have Sina, who's positive, and then Katniss, she's very negative, and then you have that back and forth playing. You see, so notice, even though they have opposite positive and negative energy, it's not like they're aggressively butting heads, right? You can do this gentle push and pull to add that tension in, and that kind of interactions can feel richer than just hi, like, you know, and then they fight and then that's it, right? Sometimes people, it feels so bland, right? But here the story is not just moving the plot forward with with more explanation, right? You can feel the emotions between them, right? And those are ways to enrich your story. Yeah. Yeah. Subtext is also interesting. So it's an additional layer of meaning below what is there as face value. This one's a bit hard. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you like kind of an excerpt. If you Google like subtext, this is one of the examples you'll see. But basically, it's the idea where where like what is being said or what is being shown might be opposite of what's being like what's really intended, right? There's a lot of hidden stuff underneath, right? So example, but he made no move to kiss her. She gave him a sidelong glance from under her lashes and murmured encouragingly, "So you always get paid, do you? And what do you expect to get from me?" "That remains to be seen." "Well, if you think I'll marry you to pay for the bonnet, I won't," she said daringly, and gave her head a saucy flirt that set the plume to bobbing. His white teeth gleamed under his little moustache. "Madam, you flatter yourself. I do not want to marry you or anyone else. I am not a marrying man." "Indeed," she cried, taking aback and now determined that he should take some liberty. "I don't even intend to kiss you either." "Then why is your mouth all pursed up in that ridiculous way?" she cried as she caught a glimpse of herself and saw that her red lips were indeed in the proper pose for a kiss. "Ah!" she cried again, losing her temper and stamping her foot. "You're the horridest man I have seen, and I don't care if I never lay eyes on you again." So over here, there's like this tension, right? Or like this subtext. She's saying something. She means a different thing, right? So this is another kind of tension to a certain extent, right? You like another example is like, "Oh, you can do it. See if I care," right? And sometimes they say "see if I care," but you know that if the other character did it, they would definitely care, right? So these kind of things are also good ways to kind of spice it up, because even though the scene feels like it's going one way, right, the reader can feel it moving the other way. You know, it's similar to how in a hero action movie, it's too early in and all the characters are working together and everything is going right. And you're just like, that's probably not gonna end well. It's probably a trap. It's probably an ambush, right? Surely something is gonna mess up because there is no way it's going this smoothly. Right. So in the same way, like you can have scenes that kind of mean the opposite of what is being said. Those are pretty fun. Okay, so any questions? Let's pause here for questions one more time. I just realized we have a section on dialogue text. So I could have said we wait until the section on dialogue text. So soon I added those in. How does subtext work in the case for first person point of views? Ooh. I think in a similar way. I mean, you can have the character say something but not mean it, right? So, for instance, oh yeah, sure. Okay, maybe let's say someone got a promotion, right? And like, yay, I got a promotion. And then he comes over to the main character, the first person point of view, right? So, like, "Oh yay, I got the promotion," and she squeals at me. "Sure, yeah, I'm happy for you. I lied." Okay, "I'm happy for you." Yeah. And then like, "I'm happy for you." I force a smile. And I reach out her hand. She grabs mine for a handshake. More than like, her shake comes across with more energy and vibrant than my cold grip. How does that feel? Yeah, you don't have to say "I disagree" or "I lied." You can say like her hand, she's more energetic, and then I grit my teeth and reply, "Sure." That sounds good. Like, happy for you. Right. I mean, it's for you to play around, right? I think like these are not all the ways that you can come up with subtext. Uh, "I'm happy for you," I said calmly. "Oh, what if I'm happy for you?" I said flatly. Oh, yeah, the vibes. Oh. You see, you like the first bit more. Simple start words actually give more weight. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, play around, right? I'm not gonna say like this and that is better or worse. I guess like play around. Um, it's You see what I mean? Like in just a few sentences, right? So think about this, right? People struggle people struggle even making their readers feel something for the characters. Yet I can tell you, she got the promotion, I didn't, right? By in so little words. She said, I got a promotion. And then the others are like, oh, I'm happy for you, I say flatly. Bam! Right? In just that few, like, 2 or 3 sentences, you can make the reader feel things. Right? Like, so writing can be very flat. And in fact, some of the writing you see out there, especially like on not in books, right? Kind of like fan fiction and stuff like that, it can be very flat because people are not pushing the limits of what you can do in writing. So it comes across as like, oh, hi, this and then that, right? But there are ways to, like, when you add tension, when you add subtext, when you add all these like additional weight to it, man, it hits hard. Right. Subtext is about hidden meanings. To a certain extent, like what you see on the surface is different from what is actually going on. That's the key idea. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. All right. The last section is on dialogue text, which I should have realized skimming through that we are gonna talk about dialogue text and say like, let's leave it to last. But yeah. So there are different schools of thought. Some people will say, change it up. Don't keep using said, right? Use commented, quip, scream, whispered, right? Because it adds color, right? Another group of people will say, oh, stick to the word said and asked. Any other dialogue text use sparingly, right? So the examples, yeah. So example, why do you keep arranging my room? He said. Because you don't clean it up yourself, she replied. But I know where everything is, he said. Now I can't find it. If I don't find my homework, my teacher says he'll get me expelled. So I'll help you find it. Right. So this is using said, right, and reply. So the other school of thought like says very, like one school of thought says like very, keep things interesting. Use too much of the word said and it gets repetitive, right? So it's like, why do you keep rearranging my room? He screamed angrily. Because you don't clean it out yourself, she yelled back. But I know where everything is, he bellowed. Now I can't find it. If I don't find my homework, my teacher says he'll get me expelled, he whined nervously. Look, she consoled him calmly. I'll help you find it. Right? So it feels a bit heavier. Right? But the reason why people try to say don't use this kind of thing, so I will move into that, right? Sit and asked are invisible to the reader. It's a bit more like, because when you start reading like he screamed angrily, right? You slow down. When you're reading, why do you keep rearranging my room? He screamed angrily. It takes time to parse that sentence, right? Whereas he says, why do you keep rearranging my room? He said. When you are reading, you will go through this line faster because there is less to read. And so you can be carried through the story faster. So this one has different colors. Heavy use of dialogue, text, and adverbs can be very distracting to the reader. And it's also used to, it gets to the point of abuse where people, like, instead of flashing the characters out, you just say, let's just use the dialogue text. She screamed angrily and he retorted and whatnot, right? But what if you use the word said, right? But instead of using he screamed, use other forms of expression to convey the emotion. So he stomped on the ground. Why do you keep rearranging my room? He said. You have the nerve to ask. It's because you don't clean it up yourself, she said. I know where everything is, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. He opened and closed drawer after drawer, searching for something. Now I can't find it. If I don't find my homework, my teacher says he'll get me expelled. Her expression softened. Look, she said, I'll help you find it. Right? How does this feel? Feels a lot better. Okay, yeah. So notice, right? I'm using the word sit the whole time. But because I no longer use the words like scream and shout and console, I in some sense I'm forced to use other ways to express that same emotion, right? So again, this is why people say use the word sit, because console, yell, scream, in some sense you are relying on them to convey, right? But here you have to use other forms of conveying, right? And when you use these other ways to convey the emotion, it comes across as richer. Okay. So another improvement, if you don't like the dialogue text, you can skip them altogether and the reader can infer it, right? He stomped on the ground. Why do you keep rearranging my room? She poked her head through the doorway. You have the nerve to ask. It's because you don't clean it up yourself. But I know where everything is. Tears welled up in his eyes. He opened and closed drawer after drawer, searching for something. Now I can't find it. If I don't find my homework, my teacher says he'll get me expelled. Her expression softened. Look, I'll help you find it. Yeah. Okay, so different styles. Feel free to use, like these are full extremes. You can still put in stuff like you have the nerve to ask, right? Then maybe you can put one yell here, you can put one sit over there. You don't have to eliminate everything, right? You can. There are ways to write. There are ways to explore. The key idea is to find like what you prefer. Yeah, I wouldn't go to an extreme and say don't use this, don't use that, right? It's up to you. Usually I see those like use more dialogue text as taught to like primary school kids because it helps them expand their vocabulary. But like towards the pro writers, like usually they're just like, okay, yeah, don't use the word, like use the word sit, please. But the words are there, so if you really do want to use it, I sometimes use some of these, so I think it's okay. So I'm biased like that. But the key idea is to explore. Okay. How about mixing? I mean, you can mix if you want, right? You again keep in mind you try writing if you are unsure, you can always try writing different versions of the same scene or the same paragraph, and then you can put it in front of people and say ask them which one do you feel reads better. And I think this will help you understand more about what people are going through when they read your story. Okay. All right. Any questions? Yeah. Okay. What's up? Happy. Oh no, you guys can hear it too. Oh man, that would be in the recording too. Oh no. What's your take on the consistency of style? I use a mix. Honestly, like this is not like A, B, or C. I do intersperse some dialogue text like screamed or whatever occasionally. But in general, I do away with dialogue text. I only use sit to help make it clear who is saying something. Yeah, but I mean, it's up to you, right? You play around, you feel what reads better. There isn't really like, oh, okay, you stick to X, you stick to Y, you stick to Z. I feel like it's your own style. No one, so long as it reads well, I think it's fine. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the take-home exercises. Um, so for this week's exercise, we'll practice writing characters in scenes. So you can pick characters from the previous prompts in exercise 3, or you can come up with your own, right? You can choose your persona, it's up to you. Try to cover different types of characters to widen your breadth, right? So don't just like, okay, I'm used to writing my persona, I'm just gonna write it all the time. If you have never written before, sure, go for it. If you feel like you have enough and you want to explore more stuff, use a different character. So first exercise, tell us about a character through their actions in a scene. So this can be like not just the person's personality, it could be their current mood, or what they're excited about, what they are looking forward to, or what they are scared of, what's on their mind, who are they gonna meet. Tell me more through their actions in the scene. So that's the scene, the character to setting kind of interaction. For the second exercise, focus more on the dialogue with another character to help you basically express the characters. Yeah. So any questions about this? So this is over here. You can take a look. Yeah. Any questions about this? Do you feel like it's doable? It's too difficult? Too easy? It's reasonable, this is doable. Strangely easy compared to last week. Was last week's hard? Oh no. Yeah, so yeah, correct. Okay, so after this I will need to take 3 weeks off. I have a convention to organize, followed by a furries meet that I'm organizing, as well as a pride event that I'm organizing with more furries. So not pride event. There's a pride event happening and I'm going there with a group of friends, but I'm organizing the group. So there's 3 in a row all on Saturdays. I'm just okay. So I recommend though, if you have time, you can do your own writing exercises. You can write stories that you're interested in writing. You can catch up on the homework. That's up to you. There is time, but I would say just don't sit on your chairs and okay, yeah, we have a break. Right? I feel like writing is a very, more practice is good. You improve by practice. At first glance, it feels like this exercise is a repeat of last week, but maybe it's because you tried to do what this one wanted to teach in last week. Possible. Yeah. We watched a critic on the homework exercise. Oh no. Okay. Yeah. That last week you described a character. Yeah, maybe I should have made that clearer. I think it's slowly, I think for instance, the first lesson, people are just I am gonna write a novel. It's oh shit. No, guys, you're just supposed to write a short story. You don't have to write super long for this. Don't worry. Just go with something simple. The key idea is kind of to get a feel of it, because the same way if you go to the gym and then you start doing some exercises for the first time, you are discovering muscles that you don't use. I'm not sure if you guys remember or even go to the gym for the first time, right? But when you go the first time and then you try a machine that you never tried before and you're just testing out, okay, so I'm moving my shoulders and using a bit of the back and chest, right? What areas of your body are you using, right? And in the same way, I have introduced you to a new dimension in writing, right? An aspect of writing that you have maybe not seen before, or maybe you understand it on a very, if I show you 2 stories, you can tell which one is better. But if I ask you to replicate it, you might not know how to, right? And so maybe you're learning something new, and this is the chance to experiment and play around with it. Yeah. Usually find out the day after exercising which part of your body you use. Yeah, you're getting that with drawing your brain muscles. Yeah. Posting in public is hard to understand. But I feel like posting in public, sometimes, it's about getting something out. I think sometimes all too often we come up with a story and then we write and then we edit and then we write and then we edit because it's not good enough, right? But if you spend all the time editing that one story, you're not getting good at writing. You're getting good at writing that one story, and that's it. Right? Sometimes the best way to learn is also to all right, I'm done with this, right? Move on. Right. Same can happen for artists, right? They keep drawing and redrawing the same piece of art and okay, bro, it's a sketch, move on, right? You can try practicing anatomy in the next picture. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm not an artist. For all you know, I'm just saying wrong stuff. Yeah, the artist in the chat says true. Okay, so I'm correct. Yeah, so sometimes it's about trying new things, right? It's about moving on. And I think part of the process of posting helps you get there, right? You say, I'm putting this out into the world, right? And it helps you let go a little and say, you know what, it's fine. I can stop editing here. And then you move on, and then you can, and sometimes moving on is good, right? You move on to write the next story, and then the next, and then the next, right? And then like 6 months later, you can look back on the stories that you wrote 6 months ago, and you're just like, wow, I have improved. But you can't do that if you've been editing the same story for 6 months. Right? There's nothing to look back on because all you are looking at is that same story over and over. Right? And then wouldn't you just get bored? Wouldn't you get tired? Right? Like change up the scene, right? Use different characters. Use a different scene, right? If you've been writing in the sci-fi setting, change it. Now it's a fantasy medieval setting, right? And then change it. Now they're in a normal situation, like modern life situation where it's a student in school, and then you change it, and then suddenly you're talking about character who's retiring soon, right? All these are fun ways to explore, right? Explore high tension romance, right? Explore like a heist scene where people are trying to break into a bank, right? Explore like a character's journey into growing up in maturity, right? You can see character development. These are ways to explore. But if you keep writing the same story over and over again, like you're not gonna learn. Yeah. You need more to have more stories. Yes. More stories is good. Yeah. Not everything has to be finished. Not everything has to be perfect. Right? It can be finished, doesn't have to be perfect. You have several stories you shelved and left incomplete, which is fine. Honestly, I think like not everything has to be like you don't need to complete everything. Like sometimes, okay, so I'm only realizing this after like discovering I have ADHD. But a lot of projects for me get like I don't finish a lot of projects because I lose interest in them very fast. Right? I start a lot of projects, I don't finish most of them. But I think the way I have explained to myself before I understood I had ADHD is that me putting down a project, right? It's not me closing the door on project. It's me saying maybe next time because I am now allowing myself to work on something else, right? I mean, it's a different story if you're at work and your boss needs you to get it done, right? You can't just, oh, I'm working on something else. Don't worry about me, right? But if it's a personal project and you've lost interest in it, right? It's supposed to be a hobby, right? Why are you forcing yourself to finish a hobby and by the end you're not even satisfied that it's done. You're just relieved that it's done. That doesn't feel good, right? So sometimes it's about allowing yourself to put it one side. Maybe next time you'll revisit it, right? But for now, you are gonna give yourself the freedom to move on to something better, something that catches your interest. Right? And sometimes, yeah, like Beth says, like you learn new things even if they don't get completed. You should probably try writing something new. I have actually written some stories and then I tried writing it in third person and it didn't work. And then I was just like, screw it. I scrapped it. I wrote it in first person. It flowed so well. Right? It was just a short story. It was just for fun. But it flowed so well and I'm just like, oh man, I'm glad I put it down to try a different version. Right? And sometimes projects are like that. You start with just your two characters, then change it up, right? Come up with new characters. It's not like you're abandoning your old two characters. You are just setting them aside. You're just picking up something new to explore. And I think that's okay. Do you have time to talk about it? Are you talking, Ruwak? Are you talking to Rodol? If yeah, then like not. Okay, sure. I can go into feedback on stream after this because we are. Damn, I'm gonna be very tired. Uh, maybe give me 20 minutes to half an hour to wash up because I just came back from I've been out since 3 and 3 in the afternoon we went to fish for prawns. It was quite fun. We fished for prawns, we barbecued the prawns we fished, and then we had dinner at a restaurant nearby, and then I got back and it's 9 p.m. and I'm like, let's teach a lesson. Woo. So I'll watch up first. I could get on stream. So that's twitch.tv/twisted snakes as well. And then I'll probably go through some of the stories. The rest, it's fine. I am constantly in motion. Alright, with that, let's end the session here. Have a good day, you guys. See ya.